This is my review of the Detective Pikachu movie. Okay, so I watched the Detective Pikachu movie because we went there for my birthday, which was Wednesday. So, wish me happy birthday, yay! A little bit late for that at this point, but yay! Anyway, the movie was great. I enjoyed it, and my parents, who know nothing about Pokemon, also enjoyed it. And yeah, my parents actually enjoyed it. So the movie was quite similar to the game, which is not surprising considering it's supposed to be based on the game. And the story is mostly the same. There are some differences, which I will point out when I get to them, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same. So there's not really any major spoilers, except for maybe one or two here or there. But for the most part, it's very similar to the game. So if you play the game, you'll probably know exactly what's going on. So it starts off as you would expect with the car crash involving Harry Goodman and his Pikachu, and the arrival of Mewtwo, who goes to Detective Pikachu for help, and yada yada yada. You know the drill at this point. You've probably played the game at this point, which is why you're watching the movie in the first place, which is why I want to watch it. But even if you didn't watch it, you'll still enjoy the movie. But anyway, there's the accident, and Tim, who is played by Justice Smith in this instance, is just fresh off a traumatizing experience in which he was tricked in trying to catch a Pokemon and failed to catch a Cubone, and it attacked him. So he's fresh off of that traumatizing experience. After this, he gets a call from his father's old friend and colleague, Lieutenant Yoshida of the Rhyme City Police Department, who I think is supposed to be a combination of all of the detective and police characters from the game. Because when I was watching him in the movie, I was picking up a bit of Inspector Holliday, Detective Baker, and Brad McMaster's in him. Because he's kind and considerate and was friendly to the father in the way that Detective Baker and Inspector Holliday were. And he works in a police station like Inspector Holliday did in the game. But he also has a bit of Brad McMaster's in him, in that once he sets his mind to something, he's very convinced that's correct. And that comes into play later, but it doesn't play into play right now. So Tim goes to visit Lieutenant Yoshida and takes the train to Rhyme City, which he planned to do when he was younger, but never did because he had a bit of an interesting relationship with his father. I'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, he goes to Rhyme City, and after being licked by a Lickitung, which is both equal parts disturbing and cute at the same time, we actually listens to a promotional thing while riding there about Rhyme City, which, as you would expect, is a city where people and Pokemon are supposed to get along. But what we don't realize is that Roger Clifford, who is kind of sort of still the bad guy in this, I'll explain that. But anyway, his father, Howard, actually founded Rhyme City because he had a debilitating illness that bound him to a wheelchair and couldn't walk, and began exploring, going out, finding himself, and realized that the best way to cure his illness was to become a better version of himself. So he created Rhyme City, a city where people and Pokemon could live in harmony. There's no Pokemon battles, or at least there's not supposed to be. I'll get to that in a minute. But the explanation here is that he created Rhyme City as a safe haven for people and Pokemon to get along and be friends with one another. Although there are some problems with that. I'll explain that when I get to it. But anyway, Tim arrives in Rhyme City and goes to the police station to talk to Yoshida, who informs him about what happened and about the accident and what happened with Harry. And also, it's revealed that when Tim was younger, he tried to be a Pokemon trainer but gave up on it for whatever reason. That's explained later. But but Tim just shrugs it off and asks for the keys to his dad's old apartment, which Lieutenant Yoshida happily gives him, and then points out that even though Harry was always involved in his work, he never forgot about his son and always wanted his son to live up to his best potential and loved his son very much, even though even though they do have an estranged relationship because they live in separate cities and separate regions. But Tim goes to the apartment building where he meets Lucy, who is supposed to be a stand-in for Amelia from the games, but she's not Amelia from the games, even though she's supposed to be. I don't know why they changed the names. But anyway, they also changed the name of the station she works at. She doesn't work at GNN because I'm pretty sure that would have been way too close to CNN for them to get away with it. So instead they changed it to CMN, which is a lot different, and there's really no way you can sue that. That's not going to backfire horribly, obviously. And she was actually in the apartment because she was trying to get the scoop on Harry Goodman and what happened to him. But Tim just kind of shrugs it off and walks away. And then goes up to his dad's old apartment, where he starts going through some of his dad's old stuff, and goes into his room where it's revealed that he tried to be the Sinnoh champion, but failed miserably, and his passion for Pokemon kind of died after that. Kind of, sort of. It's explained a little bit later, but throughout the film, we also get to learn a bit more about his past, and we also learn that he used to live in that the room he's in the dad's apartment is meant to be resembled his childhood room, and that his childhood room was coincidentally a Pikachu bed. That's purely coincidence, but it's actually revealed that his mom actually died, and he went to go live with his grandma after that. So that would probably explain why he's just now returning to Rhyme City after all this time. But anyway, he's going through his dad's old stuff and accidentally releases a vial of R. You guys who played the game will probably know exactly what that means. And accidentally doses a group of Apom with it. That comes back to bite him later. But anyway, he continues exploring the apartment and eventually runs into Pikachu, played by Ryan Reynolds, who is a bit concerned. And the two of them have an initially freak out moment because initially Tim believes Pikachu to be an intruder and then realizes he's not, but then freaks out because Pikachu is somehow able to speak, but only to him, and it's a fact that Pikachu laments by saying that he's been lonely. And it's around this time where the Apoms actually break into the apartment and start attacking the two of them, and the two run out of the apartment up to the roof and down the trash chute, although Tim loses some clothing to the Apom along the way, so he's in his undershirt and in boxers after this. And he tries to warn everybody about the Apom, but by that point the Apom have calmed down and even return his pants. So yeah, and also Tim finds out that Pikachu can't speak to anybody else, only to Tim. And Tim is a bit confused as to that and starts having some questions, the primary motive being why was Pikachu in his dad's apartment? And Pikachu realizes that Tim is Harry's son, and also reveals that on the inside of the signature detective hat is an address for Harry's old apartment, and that the hat used to belong to Harry, although it's too small and was probably made for his Pikachu to begin with. But anyway, I digress. And then the two go to the Hi Hat Cafe, which is surprisingly run by Ludicolo, but Pablo isn't in it for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe he is there and he's not like a major character in this. I don't know. But the thing is, they go to the Hi Hat Cafe and Pikachu explains everything, and then Tim explains to Pikachu that Harry is dead, which sends Pikachu reeling a little bit because he's convinced that Harry is not dead since he survived, and is pretty convinced that Harry survived as well. So they start and suggest that they start investigating what happened to Harry. And Tim kind of shrugs it off and doesn't really understand, and doesn't really understand the benefits of having a Pokemon that can speak to other Pokemon and translate what they're saying. But then Pikachu reveals something that most people probably didn't know about the Pokemon that you actually have as your partners, which is that the Pokemon can't actually understand what you're saying, but they can feel what you're feeling. So in the heat of battle, they can actually kind of understand what you're feeling and the emotions that you're feeling, and that's why being a trainer works. It's because Pokemon can't understand you, but they can feel what you're feeling. And that's actually a pretty interesting revelation for that movie, and for the entire Pokemon genre in general, and the entire series. So Tim decides to sleep on it, and and when he wakes up, he finds out that Pikachu has littered the entire living room area with clues. And while initially dismissing it, he eventually finds a newspaper article and realizes that the best source would probably be to go to Lucy and find out what she knows. And sure enough, they go to CMN, or whatever it's called now. I don't know. It was GNN, but now it's CMN. It's confusing. But anyway, they go to CMN, and they're walking on the middle of a promotional thing for the upcoming parade, which is a major plot point in the game, and I will get to that in a minute. But because that scene plays out a little bit differently for the most part. But anyway, they go in there, and after they finish the promotional commercial, the two Cliffords start arguing with one another. Roger is upset with his dad because his dad always spends more time with Pokemon than with him, and his dad is just kind of upset about how he's not living up to the legacy, and then his Ditto escorts him out because, as I said, Howard Clifford is restrained to a wheelchair and can't walk on his own, so he has his Ditto help him with that. And it's also not exactly revealed, but actually no. It was revealed in Gen 7 that Dittos can actually transform into humans, which is kind of terrifying on its own, but they don't seem to really have any cognitive ability. So they really are just Pokemon following orders. But yeah, his Pokemon wheels him out, and then Roger and Lucy have a bit of an argument about a new news article that Lucy wants to run, but Roger doesn't want to run it because he's an ass, and tells her to just stick to getting coffee. And Tim, who has watched all of this, goes to console Lucy and then asks her about what she knows about R, and reveals that she had been investigating it for a while, and that she found a trace of it going to the docks. So they go there and discover that Harry's informant is in fact a Mr. Mime, and a very hilarious scene where they're trying to deduce what Mr. Mime is actually saying, because according to the film, unlike other Pokemon, Mr. Mime is unable to speak at all. He instead pantomimes everything he's saying, and eventually Tim figures out how to get inside his head and get him to talk, quote unquote, but eventually he figures out how to get inside Mr. Mime's head and get him to divulge information, and it's revealed that Harry went to a underground fight club for Pokemon and was investigating R there. So they go to the fight club, and a strange woman, later revealed to be Howard's assistant, actually texts Howard that the kid and his Pikachu have arrived, and they go to find the manager of the place, which happens to be the DJ of the Fight Club music area, but the Fight Club owner isn't too happy to see Pikachu, because Pikachu apparently came in with Harry and fought the club owner's Charizard and won, and also accidentally scarred his Charizard and ruined his favorite coat. So he refuses to give any information to Tim or Pikachu unless they're willing to partake in a rematch, which they agree to, until the owner gives his Charizard R, and things go bad, very bad. And it's also in this scene, it's revealed that there aren't supposed to be Pokemon battles in Rhyme City, but there are anyway, but they're illegal, so they're illegal Pokemon fights. But anyway, Pikachu goes into the ring, is freaking out, and is running away from the Charizard, like he should, because in any situation like this. But it's eventually Tim who steps in, and realizing Pikachu can't use moves, because in the game that's a major component of the thing, and then in the final scene he actually uses Thunderbolt to take down the main bad guy. Tim actually decides to stomp on the Charizard's tail to try and put it out, which enables Pikachu to distract the Charizard and get it to stun itself and take itself out. So this actually winds up being bad, because Tim actually gets knocked into the nightclub owner, who has several more vials of R in his coat, and it just spreads everywhere throughout the Fight Club, and every Pokemon in the vicinity goes crazy. And Pikachu and Tim are able to get the information that they need from the nightclub owner, who reveals that it came from some doctors, and that's all that he knows. And then they get arrested because they were at the Fight Club, which is illegal. But then Yoshida actually bails them out, and Tim tells them what he's learned. But actually it's revealed that Harry couldn't have survived the crash even if Pikachu had somehow survived, because Yoshida actually shows a clip of what happens with the car and how it actually flipped over from an explosion. And it's kind of hard to survive a car that's been tipped over by an explosion. I don't know if you know. But anyway, afterwards, Tim is a bit dejected, and he and Pikachu have a bit of a heart-to-heart, and Tim reveals why he stopped being a Pokemon trainer. It was actually because his father moved to Rhyme City shortly after his mom died to get away from, I don't know, maybe to just get away from his family in general, to keep and try to help cope with his loss. But Tim just kind of blamed him for it and refused to ever see his father and want anything to do with him. And that's why he stopped being a Pokemon trainer in the first place. But Pikachu points out that he may not know, that while he may not have known much, especially about his relationship with Harry, he realizes that Harry most likely loved his son and wanted the best for him. And that makes Tim feel better. And it's around this point where Howard's assistant comes in and with a car and escorts them to the Clifford Industries main building, where they actually meet with Howard, who tells them that for a while his son has actually started to become more and more bitter because of his child neglect or something like that. And actually tells them that as time went on, he actually started owning more and more of the company and controlling more and more of it. And then reveals that Mewtwo actually spirited Harry away and doesn't know where he is. But realizing they have a lead, being that they got it from some scientists, and that they came from a science lab, they actually request help from Lucy, who actually reveals that there is a science lab in the area called PCL from the original game, but it comes a lot later in the movie. So they go to PCL, which is run down due to Mewtwo having escaped previously, which is what caused the accident, kind of, sort of. I'll explain that in a minute. That's revealed later. But they go to PCL and start investigating, at which point they discover two or three major experiments, one of which being some mutated, augmented Greninja, which according to the staff don't look right, and according to the characters in the game don't look right, and they don't look right at all. I mean, I know Greninja are like supposed to be frogs, but even in the context of the movie, and even with the CGI, they don't look right. They don't look like normal Greninja, or at least I think we've seen other Greninja up till this point, but we don't really. But these Greninja look wrong, very wrong. So So while they also discover a Torterra garden that was apparently experimenting with growth increasing, but there wasn't really much evidence to that yet. That's a major plot point in the movie, but since the Torterra look normal, they just dismiss it. And then they find the place where Mewtwo was held, and while most of the files are corrupted, they do find out some major important plot points. So apparently PCL and the head doctor were actually experimenting with Mewtwo, using him to create R, while also experimenting with a neural inhibitor of some sort that enables somebody to control their Pokemon. And I think you have an idea of where this is going. But they also find out that Harry was actually tasked to begin with to track down Mewtwo. And that's actually a little bit interesting. I mean, it's explained later why he did it, but at the time, it's believed that Harry was one of the bad guys and he was actually helping the bad guys. He wasn't, but at the time, that's what people believed was actually happening. And so did Detective Pikachu and Tim, who didn't really know their father, who really didn't know Harry all that well because Pikachu has amnesia and Tim hasn't seen his father in literal years. So they really don't know what Harry was thinking during that. But at this point that Roger, realizing that, well, Roger, I'll explain that in a minute. But Roger wearing sunglasses was actually watching them through the cameras at PCL, and releases the Greninja, who capture Lucy in their tongue and hold her and her Psyduck captive, while also trying to capture Tim. But Tim is able to use some steam from a nearby pipe to distract them and get them to let go of Lucy, and they run through the Torterra garden. And realizing that Psyduck, who has been with them at this entire journey and whose entire thing is that if it gets headaches, its mind will literally explode. Well, not literally, but figuratively explode in like a psi wave or something. And Pikachu realizes that the only way to escape the Greninja is to get it extremely stressed. So he intentionally insults it and tells it that that's worthless, stuff like that, which causes it to get stressed and causes it to have a meltdown. And its headache actually causes the Greninja to go away because it releases a psi burst or a psychic burst or whatever and sends them running. Unfortunately, this has an unintended side effect because as it turns out, they're in the real Torterra garden and the size increase did in fact work. And they realize this a bit too late because the landmasses start moving and Pikachu is accidentally injured by a falling rock. And Tim is trying to keep himself calm, but he's kind of freaking out because the one person who's been there for him this entire time is suddenly starting to lose consciousness, and he has no way of helping Pikachu. And then suddenly a Bulbasaur walks up, and although Tim knows that it won't be able to understand him, it does know what he's feeling, and he tries to get it to help, and it does. It brings back all of its Bulbasaur friends, who escort him to a nearby plateau in a nearby area, in a nearby cavern, where Mewtwo himself is actually revealed to have been hiding the entire time, and actually heals Pikachu and tries to explain what exactly is going on, but is interrupted because Roger, with his sunglasses, it actually captures Mewtwo and stuffs him in a containment unit. But before Mewtwo can fully explain, it's actually revealed that Pikachu actually let Mewtwo out, and from what we see in the scene, it's believed that Mewtwo actually caused the accident, even though he didn't. That's explained later. But Pikachu believing that he helped betray Harry actually has a falling out with Tim and actually leaves because he doesn't want to hurt Tim, and actually walks off. Meanwhile, Lucy and Tim go back to the city and are trying to figure out what to do next. Lucy wants to run the story, but realizes that the guy who runs the news actually runs the news, is the news, so they can't really go to him for help. And And Tim just is kind of depressed because Pikachu just kind of walked out on him, so he had no idea what to do next. So he just leaves, but realizes that Clifford Industries is inflating the balloons, and then realizes that they're actually filling the balloons with R, and goes to tell Howard the bad news. But then it's revealed that by Pikachu that it wasn't actually Mewtwo that caused the accident, and it was in fact a group of Greninja. Case in point, he finds some Greninja throwing stars which are broken on the pavement and were actually the cause of Harry's accident, and runs back to the city and arrives too late because around that point it's actually revealed that Howard, not Roger, is actually the main bad guy of the film and invented the neural inhibitor and R for one purpose. He wanted to have Mewtwo's body so that he could walk again, and then use Mewtwo's powers, which somehow have the ability to merge people and Pokemon together. And that's kind of terrifying. And he does succeed in this. He uses Mewtwo's body after taking control of it, at which point Mewtwo just tells Tim to run, to take over, to merge every person with their Pokemon. And while Lucy tries to warn everybody, she's unsuccessful, and she herself actually winds up being merged with her Psyduck. Pikachu happens upon the scene and realizes just what's going on, and realizes that Howard is actually responsible, and goes to challenge Howard, now in control of Mewtwo. But realizing he can't actually beat Howard, actually tries instead to try and distract him so Tim can disable the neural inhibitor, because he sees Tim in the building and realizes that he might be able to stop him. Meanwhile, Tim, who had been knocked out by Mewtwo, comes to and realizes something very important. He realizes he can actually just stop all of this by disabling the neural inhibitor, but Howard actually planned for this. And then the twist comes in. It's revealed that Roger was never actually helping his father, and has in fact been tied up in a closet for several hours of the movie, in movie time. And then it's revealed that the person we thought was Roger is in fact not a person at all, but that the creature actually shapeshifts into his assistant, and then is revealed to be Howard's Ditto. So, and then Howard's Ditto just casually mops the floor with Tim, and is only saved because Roger actually intervenes and actually helps save Tim, and together they're able to take down the Ditto. So, yeah. And then Tim is able to remove the neural inhibitor from the back of Howard's brain, which releases Mewtwo from Howard's control, and Howard is carted away in jail, and Mewtwo undoes all of the accidents and stuff that it had inadvertently caused. So Mewtwo, up until this point, is actually kind of being a more benevolent character. He's not trying to destroy the world, he's actually trying to help, because he realized after, at a point, that humans aren't actually evil, and despite his interests. And then he actually reveals one last plot twist. Apparently Harry almost didn't survive the crash, and was actually close to death when Mewtwo found him. So Mewtwo decided to help Harry by merging his mind into Pikachu's. And basically, in that one moment, confirms a theory that we have been speculating about the film and the games for quite a while. So, yeah, it's revealed the entire time that Pikachu was actually Harry Goodman in Pikachu form, and which is why he has amnesia, because he inadvertently created Detective Pikachu. So after Mewtwo frees everybody and undoes what has been done, he actually undoes what he did with Detective Pikachu, and Roger, realizing he was kind of a jerk to Lucy, decides to let her run the story, and tells her and Tim that he plans to fix the wrongs that he and his father had done, because while he wasn't the main bad guy, he was sort of responsible for what happened, because he did kind of help with the genetic research in just a little bit. and actually leaves to go fix all the problems that he had caused. And then it's revealed that Tim's father is actually Ryan Reynolds, and the two decide to reconcile, and Tim actually moves in with his father, and the two reconcile, and Tim actually considers becoming a detective. So now we have like Ryan Reynolds and Tim Goodman actually going out and doing things. So it's an interesting movie. I liked it, and obviously spoilers. But the thing about the Ditto is that it was actually pretty goddamn terrifying. I don't know if you... Okay, so the whole thing is that the Pokemon are all CG and it's live, and everything else is live action. But what's really terrifying about this is that the Ditto manages to strike a balance between the two. The Pokemon itself is CG, but it's actually able to transform into humans and Pokemon alike, save for its eyes, which are little beady black dots. So imagine for a moment humans with Ditto eyes. That's terrifying. And let's not forget the fact that the Ditto was casually wrecking Tim up until Roger intervened, and actually was pretty was actually pretty adept at fighting. So overall, Tim would have been screwed if Roger hadn't helped him. And I do like the idea, the little plot twist, because if you've played the games, you know that Roger's the main bad guy, but in the movie, it's actually his father who's the main bad guy, and Mewtwo winds up playing a bigger role by inadvertently being made the bad guy of the film, and is pretty much unstoppable because he's freaking Mewtwo. But what I liked about this movie is that there were a lot of Pokemon in it that you could easily recognize. And even then, you didn't have to recognize the film, because I watched this with my sister and my parents, and my mom and my dad actually did like it, despite it being a Pokemon film. And even though they didn't really know any of the Pokemon, they did kind of understand what the story was and did like the story. So clearly, the Legendary Pictures has indeed found a winning formula for a good Pokemon movie, and that's actually kind of cool. But it's just interesting that they could actually make a good movie, especially one that's a video game movie, because if you guys don't know, video game movies have had a bad rap. They've had a terrible track record for decades of being terrible for the most part. And Detective Pikachu actually kind of fixed that, and has actually opened the door for better movies in general, starring video game characters. I'm not entirely sure how it's gonna work, because to my knowledge, the next Pokemon movie, well, not the next movie, but the next video game movie after Detective Pikachu is apparently Sonic the Hedgehog. So I'm going to be reviewing that, but hopefully it continues the trend of good video game movies, because I'm gonna be disappointed if Sonic isn't a good movie. But I do like Sonic. I do like Detective Pikachu. Detective Pikachu is like my favorite detective. So I'm definitely interested to see what they do with the new Pokemon formula and stuff like that, because Legendary Pictures does have full rights to Pokemon now. So we'll probably be seeing more Pokemon movies in this vein coming down the line. And I honestly have no idea what they're going to be doing with it. But I hope they continue to make good movies like this, and I hope they continue to make good video game movies in general. It's because the curse is finally broken, and I hope that they can continue keeping this trend going of having good video game movies. Because I do like video games, I do like movies, but they haven't exactly meshed well up until now. But if you guys did indeed watch Detective Pikachu and enjoyed my rant or whatever about it, what did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you liked it, hit that like and subscribe button. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below, because I post updates over there, and it's kind of important that you see them, because I don't exactly post update vlogs over here. But if you also want to help support the channel, then go check out my Patreon, because it's only a couple bucks a month, and I do like making videos for you guys, and a Patreon is the best way to do that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!